We're going to talk about, for the next few minutes, the evolution of innovation. Why we are here today. And innovation is a continuous process. 5 million years ago, the first human came on the planet. Then we had the fire. 5,000 years ago, we had the wheel. And today, hundreds of years later, we are here today. And for the purposes of discussion today, we are going to baseline ourselves for the 19th century. And I'll tell you why I just picked upon 19th century. If you look at 19th century, it's a landmark in humanity in many different ways. The French, the Mughal empires, and the Spanish empires all declined in the 19th century. The British and the Russian empires gained dominance in the 19th century. Do you also know that the world reached 1 billion in population in the 19th century? In 1867, world reached 1 billion in population. Famous books were written in the 19th century. Oliver Twist was written in the 19th century. Alice in Wonderland was written in the 19th century. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata was written in the 19th century. Antarctica was discovered in the 19th century. Alaska was sold by the Russians to the Americans for $7 million in the 19th century. All of this happened in the 19th century, but that's not what we are here to talk about. What we want to talk about Thank you. 19th century was the age of what we call the inventor entrepreneurs. And who are the inventor entrepreneurs? They are people who have innovated and invented products that have created multi-billion-dollar industries that are here today. They have affected our daily lives, and what we do today are because of these people. Anybody know who this gentleman is? That is correct. Thank you. So, Alexander Graham Bell, he invented the telephone in 1875, and today the industry is $1.1 trillion, the whole communications industry. This gentleman proposed to his wife in Morse code, Thomas Alva Edison. He invented the light bulb, and today it is a $2 trillion industry. Any guesses? Sorry? Yes. Siemens Corporation, $80 billion industry. He was responsible for this single-handedly. The Wright brothers, the avionics industry. Today it's a $5 trillion industry today, and a little piece of trivia here. They never flew together on the plane. You know why they never flew together? They were always separately on the plane, never flew together, because their father told them that it's too high risk. If you crash, please don't fly on the plane together. But it was a $5 trillion industry, but there are only 4 examples. There are so many of these people that have resulted in building industries in the consumer industry, in the automotive industry, in the telecom industry. Robert Bosch as an example. Sorry, yeah. And late 19th century, early 20th century, so we have these inventor entrepreneurs who are truly responsible for innovating and building and products that we use today. But what happened after this? It was the age of the corporate R&D in late 1920s, and these corporate R&D folks were really, really smart. They took these inventor entrepreneurs and they brought them into their corporations. So the first one was Thomas Edison. He started GE Research Lab in 1900s. The second one was Robert Bosch, and everybody knows about Robert Bosch. The internal fuel combustion engine, right? He pioneered this in 1901. Alexander Graham Bell, he started Bell Labs. IBM, unit recording machine. They started the IBM lab. So you can see the millions of dollars that were pumped in, and they brought in the inventor entrepreneurs. They were winning Nobel Prizes, and they were making investments in core technologies in physics, bio, and chemistry. And innovation flowed back into the corporate R&D. Park, Xerox in Silicon Valley. Little known fact that they invented the first computing machine even much before Apple did. And if you move on, fast forward for the next 50, 70 years till 2010, you can see hundreds of corporate R&D organizations spending our research fundings over $600 billion just in the year 2015 alone in R&D investments. So the inventions and innovations flowed back into corporate R&D. right? But what happened now? This is what we call the age of porous innovation. Innovation has escaped out of corporate R&D. It's not within their control, and they can't do anything about it. They have to start to deal with it. It flew out, and this is what we call as innovation. They have to coexist, and you heard Pari talk about it a little bit in terms of how they have to coexist with the disruption that you see outside. Just a piece of statistics for you. You can see the numbers, extreme numbers on your right. $430 billion invested in organizations outside. You saw $640 billion in R&D. You're seeing $430 billion in startups. You can see where the money is going. And you can see the startup 45 startup accelerators. Startup accelerators are ecosystems that these corporations use through porous innovation to adapt to the innovation that is rapidly happening around them. 36,000 exits in the last 5 years have happened. 36,000 exits have happened globally as far as innovation is concerned. And we heard Dominique talk about it, we heard Pari talk about it, as to why all this is happening. So just to recap, we had the age of inventor entrepreneurs, where the individuals were responsible for innovation. Then we had the corporate R&D. They brought innovation in-house, and they wanted to manage innovation and make money for everybody. And now it's all gone out. It's back. So how do we deal with this? All of us in the room are affected by this. It affects our daily lives. So what, and why did it suddenly happen? Why today of all the time that this has happened? Because it's a perfect storm, that's what we call it. It is the confluence of miniaturization of hardware. You have an Apple iPhone 7, and you have the Cray computer in 1969. This has more power, lightweight, it only costs $700. And that weighed 10 tons, and it cost $5 million to build. That's miniaturization. An F-15 fighter jet has 5 million lines of code. A BMW today has upwards of 50 million lines of code. That's software proliferation. You heard about network from Dr. Soldani. 5G networks are extremely low latency and high bandwidth networks. And last and not least, we talked about data, and you heard Pari talk about data and data monetization. So it's the perfect confluence of data, network, hardware miniaturization, and software proliferation that has given rise to this disruption that is taking place around us. It didn't happen by chance, but this is all at very high level. What does it really mean for us? So I brought this down to two use cases, one in the telecom industry and one in the automotive industry. So I talked about billions of devices. You look at this chart. Look at the chart on your left. Those are the devices. They're in always on mode. What is different in telecom networks today? All these devices are in always on mode. So the load, the payload on the telephone network, the switches are totally different now. They're in always on mode. So the demand of the network has changed. It's more elastic, it's more agile, it has to be managed. Why? Because that's the new demand. That's the connected world that we are in. And then we have the content providers and the enterprise cloud. So the network, telecom network in the middle, and you heard Dr. Soldani very briefly mention, I don't know if you noticed, he talked about the control plane and the data plane, basically the network being split. And that's all happening in the middle. So you have the demand changing, you have the supply changing because of disruption. And what is really happening here? So if you look at this box, that was the box made by the 5 companies. Their market cap hasn't changed in 10 years. If you take the market capitalization of those other than Huawei, of the other 4 companies, they haven't changed in the last 10 years. They've just stayed stable. It's gone up and down, but they haven't changed. The question is, why haven't they changed? Because that box has changed. They sell that box. But this is what the customers are buying. The box is broken up into 3 layers. You have the application layer, the control layer, and the infrastructure layer. Right? And that is the innovation that is going on in those layers. So you have the old box, you control the box, you control the technology, you charge whatever you wanted for it, and you made money out of it. But then, this is what the world is doing outside. They break up the box, and they have the 3 layers. So if you look at what was on the left, it was proprietary and single vendor. This is open to hundreds in the ecosystem. Anybody can build it. That is closely integrated. This is open and horizontal functions. Millions of lines of hardware code. Lightweight. 1 to 2 releases per year. Daily and weekly releases. Vendor-driven. Controlled. Ecosystem-driven fast. Barrier of innovation high, barrier of innovation low. So you can see exactly what we just talked about, how a simple box that the telecom folks were selling, and you can see the impact, what's happening to Nokia, the mergers, what's happening to Cisco, what's happening to Ericsson, you can see it all around you. That is what is driving that. But if you take a step back, that was just one box that I talked about. If you take a step back and look what's happening on SDN and NFV, on multimedia, Internet of Things, network, every single component that composes the ecosystem or the box inside and outside is getting disrupted. It's getting disrupted by exactly what I told you. It's getting disrupted by the players who have taken innovation and who have taken out of control of what's there within the enterprise. So what does it mean? So if you read this slide, and I'll read it for you over here, right? The value has gone beyond the box. If you just look at the left column, the value is not in the box anymore, it's outside. So how do you make money? The box has got commoditized. There are no barriers to entry. Anybody can build these products. You had a barrier to entry before. There's no barrier to entry. The customers are buying differently. The telecom service providers, they're buying differently today. They're selling differently. And there are newer sales models. So ultimately, if you look on the right, as who you are, who we are, as managers, as companies, organizations that manage engineering teams, that manage strategy, that sell into these organizations, you have to manage the disruption. How do you manage the disruption? What is your strategic value proposition? How does it change today? What are your technology choices? How do you make them? There's so many technology choices. How do you know the choices that you're making are the right technology choices? What is your role in the industry ecosystem? It's just not about you anymore. It's about you and the industry ecosystem. Do you build? Do you buy? Do you partner? These are all the strategies that today the engineering head or the strategy head have to make these technology choices because of the disruption around them. So this was the first use case. The second one is in the automotive space, and very similar, extremely similar, and we heard a lot about it from Dominique, and you would have seen this slide before. And look at the old architecture. That's the old architecture on the left. You have the tier ones selling to the OEMs who are selling to the customers. That's it. So the end customer are buying from the dealers and the aftermarket. It's a very simple linear model. The OEMs controlled everything. But if you look at the box on the right, the OEMs are now buying from the software manufacturer. They buy directly from Altran if they have to. If Altran has what they have. Altran couldn't sell directly to the OEMs before. They had to sell into tier ones. The electronic tier ones and the traditional tier ones. But look, more importantly, look what the end customer point is. There are 5 touch points. And most important, it's not a product anymore for the end customer. It's a product or a service. The car is not, you're not sometimes buying a car, you're buying a ride. So the end customer today, so the automobile industry is now not just dealing with the OEM changing, the OEM buying patterns, but the end customer today is buying a product or a service. It's completely transformed the auto industry, and they're predicting obviously car sales is going to go down. But this just shows you, again, if I look at the similar slide, if I step back and I showed you the telecom slide, the same thing is happening in the automobile, inside the car. Every component, whether it's infotainment unit, your safety unit, your powertrain unit, your drivetrain unit, your infotainment clusters, every single bit is getting innovated. Your security systems. And just as the box is getting disrupted, this box is also getting disrupted. And you heard Pari very simply explain, anybody can make a car after some time. So what is the value proposition right now? And this slide is, I just wanted to bring up this slide because, and these are all from the database that Zinnov has and the platform that we have, and I'll get to that in a minute. These are all the OEMs. If you look at their investments, the way you read this slide is, that's the head count. On your left are the head count. And on the right, you multiply the percentage by the head count to get the investment, and that's how you read the slide. So if you look at Ford, 30% in data science, they have 125 people, which means 35 people are in data sciences. But more importantly, if you look data and connectivity investment, the big blobs, the big circles, and I go back to my earlier point of the perfect storm, it's data, it's connectivity, it's software. Right? It again goes back to that. So these are the investments that are taking place, and this is all in Silicon Valley, that is driving this disruption and this change. You heard Dominique talk about this. He said over the next 10 years, 50% will go up, but the data today is 25% are out of the Fortune 2000 companies, right? And what has changed? And we saw this earlier slide in an earlier keynote. Today, the role of R&D has changed. It's no more the hub and spoke. The R&D headquarters have to realize that it is an ecosystem that is working today. They have to work with universities, they have to work with startups, they have to work with partnerships, and just because of what I just said. Because innovation, they can't control innovation, it's outside. If you stay within your own walls, and I'm not saying that you should not stay within your own walls, all I'm saying is there is a way to manage change and the way to deal with all of this. This is my last slide before we have a quick 2-minute demo. So, as Zinnov, how do we want to help our customers? Our customers are technology officers, strategy officers, service providers who deal with this. So, what we have done is we built this platform. This platform has the data, global engineering data of the top 500 companies in the world today, and they are segmented vertically. They're focused on telecom, they're focused on automotive, they're focused on medical devices, consumer electronics, and so on and so forth. And it has 3 modules. It has the digital ecosystem, which is the disruption module. Most of the slides were from that module that I just showed. Then it has the R&D spend module. It's all about the R&D, and then it has the talent module. But if you look at it today, there are no more silos. Today, the role of the procurement function in R&D organizations has changed dramatically. It is no more about procurement and rates and costs. I just think today the procurement function in R&D organizations are playing a very key role in bringing together strategy, technology, and engineering. So the answer is right in the middle. So what we do is, in this database, we offer you the information that is there in the top 500 companies, which is a confluence of strategy, technology, and engineering, that allows you. It doesn't replace the technology office, it doesn't replace the strategy office, but it just helps them, it works with them, and allows them to make the right choices and decisions. Now, Hardik, can we just play the video here?
Today, the business environment is more dynamic than ever. Organizations constantly need to adapt to changing markets, new technologies, and consumption models. Disruptive companies are capitalizing on these changes, forcing market leaders to rethink their business. As key decision makers, you must have wondered, are we operating efficiently across all business units vis-a-vis competition? Who are the emerging disruptors in industries relevant to me? Who can I collaborate with to accelerate emerging technology product development? What technology solutions can I sell to my target customers? And who should I pitch to? Answers to these questions will profoundly affect your organization's growth prospects. Zinnov introduces Global Engineering Insights Platform. With our platform, you are now empowered to track and analyze disruptive companies, technologies, locations from more than 15,000 global R&D centers, more than 1,500 platforms or service providers, more than 150,000 startups, and more than 150 universities across 50 countries. With our platform, you also get access to Zinnov's curated insights and dedicated consultants. Get on board now.
Well, thank you very much. That's just a quick snapshot. The team is all here, and we look forward to interacting with you. Thank you.